Somebody's got to mute Brett. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the October 11, 2023 meeting of the Fond du Lac City Council. The first item of business is roll call, which is done electronically. I will declare a quorum is present. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which is followed by a moment of silent reflection. Please rise at this time. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Next on our agenda is public hearings, and we have none. We will move on. We will have the proclamation for the United Way next week, or next meeting, I should say. My apologies on that. So next on our agenda is public hearings, and we have none. So we're going to move on to the consent agenda, which finalizes the proposed actions for the meeting. A, September 20th, 2023 special council minutes. B, September 27th, 2023 regular council minutes. And C, list of claims dated October 4th, 2023. Is there any discussion from council about the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion at this time. So moved by Ms. Riccio. Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Mullen. Thank you both. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to audience comments, agenda and non-agenda items. The presiding officer will limit the speaking time for non-agenda items to 1 minute. Notice items on the agenda will get 5 minutes. Ms. Hefter, do we have anyone wishing to speak? That concludes our audience comments with no one wishing to speak. We move on to our action items, which is action item A, which is a Class A intoxicating liquor license and Class A fermented malt license. Limited liability company for Family Dollar Stores of Wisconsin, LLC. Timothy Norton is the agent. Address is 508 Mustang Lang in Fond du Lac. Doing business as Family Dollar Store, number 24805, location of premises 798 South Main Street. Introduction by Ms. Hefter.
Thank you, President Heisler. Family Dollar Stores are requesting a Class A intoxicating and fermented malt license for off-premises sales at 2 of their locations in Fond du Lac at 798 South Main Street and 47 West Scott Street. The other location at 528 West Johnson Street has been previously approved for a Class A license with no past problems. Background checks were done on the proposed agent Timothy Norton and officers of the corporation. City staff and Alcohol License Committee recommend approval of both licenses.
Thank you, Ms. Hefter. Questions for Ms. Hefter at this time? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Ms. Ricci, I'm sorry.
I see that Maggie's introduction of this item included both addresses, A and B. Or no, yeah, A and B. But we're only asking for a motion.
We need, yeah, we'll need individual motions. One for A and then one for B.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification, Ms. Ricci. So we will, with that being said, we'll take a motion on item A first at this time. Motion to approve by Mr. Mullen. Thank you, sir. Second by Mr. Schuessler. Thank you both. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. Thank you. And Ms. Hefter already gave the introduction, so we'll move on to entertaining a motion at this time for item B. Move to approve by Ms. Riccio. Second by Mr. Mullen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. Thank you all. That passes unanimously. And moving right along, we're going to go to action item C, which is a Class B fermented malt license for the limited liability company, American Enterprises, LLC. Jacqueline Reimer is the agent. The address is W8573 Prairie Road in Oakfield, doing business as RM Restaurant. The premise address is 948 South Rolling Meadows Drive. That's Suite B. And the introduction is by our city clerk.
Thank you again, President Heisler. American Entertainment LLC is applying for a Class B fermented malt license for on-premises sales at 948 South Rolling Meadows Drive. State statutes has restrictions and limitation of other businesses, and therefore the proposed area would need to be a completely separate area. City staff and Alcohol License Committee recommend approval with the following conditions. The Class B licensed establishment must have a completely separate premises description from all other licensed establishments and comply with all relevant provisions of Wisconsin State Statute 125 and the Code of the City of Fond du Lac. Separate premises must include the following: The two businesses cannot be physically connected other than an emergency exit. The two businesses must be completely walled off from one another. Customers cannot easily go back and forth between the two businesses while consuming alcohol. There are separate outside entrances to each of the two businesses. There are separate counters at each location that can monitor the requirements for each separate license. The applicant must submit a site plan to the City of Fond du Lac Inspections Department showing said separate premises descriptions. The property must pass all inspections with the City of Fond du Lac Inspections, Fire Department, and Fond du Lac County Health Department and obtain an occupancy permit.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hefter. Questions from council for Ms. Hefter at this time? Mr. Schussler.
For the benefit of the public, just what the two businesses are.
One is a convenience store and then the other one is going to be just a fast food. It's located at a gas station.
Mr. Schussler, further questions from council? I'd just like to thank the ALC because I know this is a little bit more of a complicated item to unpack, and I appreciate their work on this. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Did you have some comments, Mr. Zimmerman?
I did not know.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, knowing there are no further comments from council, I'll entertain a motion at this time. Move approval by Mr. Schussler, second by Ms. Riccio. Thank you both. Further discussion? Approval with the conditions so noted in the resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And thank you all. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Hefter. And permit to sell fermented malt beverage on park property is our item D for Fond du Lac festivals for their Fondy Falltoberfest. The first Falltoberfest takes place October 21st, 2023 at Lakeside Parks of an Island. And Ms. Hefter has an introduction for us.
Thank you again. Fond du Lac Festivals is requesting to sell fermented malt beverages on park property on October 21st, 2023 for the first ever Fondy Falltoberfest. A special event application has been submitted and approved, and city staff recommends approval with the condition that no carry-ins are permitted in the designated area.
Thank you, Ms. Hefter. Questions from council at this time? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Motion to approve by Mr. Mullen. Second by Ms. Riccio. Thank you both. Further discussion at this time? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. Hope to see you all at Fondy Falltoberfest. Thank you very much. Moving on to item E, that's resolution 9086, a resolution approving the 2024 Business Improvement District Operating Plan with supporting of the bid tax rate. And for that, our introduction is by Mr. Moore.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Maggie, would you bring that resolution up so we can just look at the therefore statement? You'll recall Amy Hansen came before you a few weeks ago, laid out the annual plan. This is the statutory requirement that you approve the tax rate. And so here in the therefore statement, you see that there's a tax rate that's unchanged from years past at 260. And then there's a minimum of 150 and a max of 3,000 in terms of the tax mins and max. And that's unchanged also from years past. So I recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Questions from council at this time for Mr. Moore? I don't see any. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion. 9086, so moved by Mr. Schussler. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Mullen. Thank you both. Further discussion at this time? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. Thanks, everyone. I believe that ends our action items for this evening. So we'll move on to our presentation of our input items. We're going to be presented with the annual comprehensive financial report, and Brian Greenwald has that for us tonight.
All right, I'm Brian Greenwald with Clifton Arson Allen. Thanks for having me here this evening. And before I get started, I do want to recognize and thank Tricia and your team for the cooperation and assistance that we received throughout the audit process. It seems like every year we implement an additional standard, and we also add things like ARPA funding and additional compliance requirements. So certainly continue to ask more and more questions and for more and more information. So certainly want to recognize your team for the assistance throughout that process. Okay, and then in terms of the financial statements and the audit results, just wanted to give you a brief overview of the different reports that are included within your annual comprehensive financial report. First off, it includes our independent auditor's opinion. As you can see in the slide, that's referenced or referred to as an unmodified or clean opinion. That is the highest level of assurance that you can receive as part of the audit process. And again, that means that I believe that your financial statements are complete and accurate and in accordance with our professional standards. That's exactly what you should hope or expect to see. In addition to that, in the middle, you'll see the reference to internal control. As part of the audit process, we do consider the organization's internal control structure. We do not issue an opinion on that. We consider that for audit planning purposes, how we design our tests, what information we ask for, and how we proceed throughout the audit process. When we become aware of what we refer to as a finding or a reportable condition, required to disclose that. We did have one for this year. You can see the slide listed as finding 2022-1, adjustments to the city's financial records. Essentially, as part of the audit process, we do work closely with your team, review documents, make sure that we agree with the numbers. And as part of that process, we did propose an adjustment that was that. In addition to that, because of the federal and state aid that you received, there's also a report on compliance included in your financial statements. From a testing standpoint, we did test three federal programs, that being the Community Development Block Grant, your Federal Transit Grant, and then also your ARPA funding. From a compliance standpoint, we perform tests. We certainly don't evaluate every transaction. And as part of that process, happy to report that we did not identify any findings issues. Any thoughts or questions on that before I move on? And next, just wanted to recognize the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So in addition to the review that you go through as part of the audit process, you also voluntarily submit your financial statements to the Government Finance Officers Association. And just wanted to recognize that this is an excerpt that is included within your annual comprehensive financial report. Certainly want to highlight you do continue to have an extensive streak going. You've received that award going back to 1995, so certainly a long streak, and congratulations on that. And based on based on our review, I certainly expect that streak will continue. And then as a reminder, we are required to communicate certain pieces of information to government as part of the audit process. This slide gives you an overview of some of those topics that are included in that governance communication letter. You can see very standardized topics, things like accounting policies, accounting estimates. I will say that the topics that are included on here are very comparable to what you've seen in the past. I would also say from my perspective, nothing that's unusual, nothing that's a red flag. I would describe it as standard accounting terminology and standard disclosures. The one thing in there that's new, just want to highlight, there are several references in both the annual comprehensive financial report as well as your governance communication letter in reference to a new governmental accounting standard that was implemented during 2022 that relates to leases and how they are presented within your financial statements. And a lot of effort on Tricia's part in going through and meeting the requirements of that standard, but you implemented that based on the requirements of that standard and timeline of when you. Then just wanted to step back and take a look at a few key pieces of financial information at a real high level. Just wanted to touch on your general fund and your fund balance. So this slide gives you a perspective of the overall amount of fund balance that you've had for each of the last 5 years. At the end of 2021, the total of all of those categories there is approximately 8.3 million. At the end of 2022, you did end with approximately 8.9 million. So you did have an increase of 707,000 for 2022. And that is the cumulative effect of all of your revenue sources and all of your expenses. That's certainly a good year from a budget standpoint. If you do care to get more into the budget details, you can see the budget to actual statement on page 30 of the comprehensive financial report. And then also I would recommend that you at least read through the management discussion and analysis that does it. Oh, certainly nice to see that increase in your overall fund balance. If you get into the different categories there, I just want to touch briefly on the assigned category as well as the unassigned. The assigned and committed categories are really categories where you've gone through and identified purposes for which you want to set aside funds. At the end of 2022, you can see 2.9 million in that assigned category set aside for your 2023 budget. You can see how that's fluctuated over time. Because of the amount in that assigned category, your unassigned category has come down a little bit. You can see that at 5.2. Again, still have 5.2 million unassigned reserves on that. This focuses a little bit more on that unassigned category. So just your general fund, just the unassigned category, and from a benchmarking perspective, comparing your unassigned dollars to the amount of actual expenditures that are going through the budget, expressing that as a percentage, you can see similar to that slight decrease in your overall unassigned dollars. Certainly, as we go through and work with governments and organizations, the impacts of inflation certainly something that's been a little bit challenging in terms of how you deal with that. I will say, if you get back into the budget to actual results, your budget to actual and your actual expenditures did come in well under budget. Budget there. And I also just wanted to touch briefly on general obligation debt. This slide is taking a look at the blue line being your statutory debt limit based on the equalized value of the property within the city. You can see how that's increased over time, and note the increase. Note the increase from 2021 to 2022, jumping up to 185 million. And then the green line focusing on your outstanding general obligation debt, the outstanding balance as of the end of the year. Again, if you work across the graph, you can see how that's fluctuated over time, ending 2022 with general obligation debt of just over 86 million. One of the reasons I like to look at this is I always like to look at the gap between those two lines, essentially meaning how much of that statutory debt limit are you actually using. This isn't presented on there, but from a percentage perspective, for 2018, you were using approximately 57% of your statutory debt limit. You carry that over to 2022, that percentage has decreased to 47%. Certainly influenced by both the increase in your equalized value as well as the change. That out. And then just wanted to touch briefly on the current and future environment from an audit standpoint. We do talk a lot about ARPA. I mentioned we tested that earlier. Whenever we talk about ARPA, we're concerned with compliance, making sure that you're spending that for appropriate expenditures, as well as meeting the reporting requirements. So we'll continue to do that going forward. Just wanted to mention that. And then again, I know I mentioned briefly new governmental accounting standards. As you can see on the slide, there's a couple things that we're going to be dealing with and implementing for the 2023 audit as well. So we'll work closely with Tricia and your team to make sure that those are properly implemented as well. Sounds good. That's all the prepared slides that I had. If anyone does have any further questions, comments, or concerns, I would be happy to address any questions.
Thanks, Brian. Excellent presentation. And we'll start our council questions with Ms. Riccio.
I have no questions. Excellent reporting and excellent work by Ms. Davy, obviously, from what she was able to give you. Thank you both.
Agree with that.
Ms. Riccio, Mr. Schuessler.
Tremendous, Brian and Tricia. Appreciate it very much. Keep reading in the Wall Street Journal about the shortage of accountants. Something happens to you, do you have backup?
Well, I'll say this, the accountant shortage is real. I will say that also applies to a lot of other professions. I'd say the good news and one of the benefits of being with a firm like CLA is we do have a very large team that specializes in state and local government and a lot of internal resources. So certainly appreciate the comment though.
Thanks, Mr. Schuessler. Mr. Mullen, you're next.
No questions. I read your report. It's very good. It's nice and clean. I just wanted to say congratulations to Ms. Davy for upholding the standards that the city has set now for almost 30 years.
Mr. Mullen. With that, I'll also add my congrats. Thank you very much to both of you for a great job. And thanks for making that so easy for guys like us who don't do accounting to understand. That's pretty awesome. It's nice to be able to have a report that breaks down that much complex financial data in terms that we can figure out. So that's pretty cool. We appreciate that. And I think if there's nothing else from council, that ends our input items, which means all we have left to do is get a motion to adjourn. Moved into adjourn by Ms. Ricchio. Second by Mr. Schuessler. This is not debatable. Please proceed to vote. That passes. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.